Good evening, lovelies. So this evening I'm going to just run a really quick live on what an average portion size actually looks like, because it is a question that I get asked an awful lot, and it's not really surprising because I think there is a lot of confusion around over what a typical portion size should look like. If you refer to the Eat Well guide, the portion sizes that they give there for, let's say, protein, for meat, the portion size of a piece of meat is supposed to be about the size of, right, okay, I shall just show you. Basically, if you were going to have a piece of fish, let's do it this way. A portion size, a typical portion size when you're looking at the Eat Well guide of a piece of fish would be one of these pieces of wild salmon. This is frozen wild salmon, so you can see it's one piece of wild salmon, and the chances are that they would advise you to take the skin off. That bit would have to go. Okay, so if you're looking at a typical Eat Well guide, you're looking at one of these pieces only, just one piece, and no skin on it at all. Okay, so this is wild Keto salmon as well, so you know this is really, really full of nutrition. And as far as the Eat Well guide is concerned, also pieces of cheese. This is an interesting one. It is for me. I'm just going to open a new packet. So I want to show you a portion size for a piece of cheese as advised by the Eat Well guide. So remember that the Eat Well guide basically is the guide that we're all supposed to refer to. This is what we're all supposed to run our lives by and run our diets by. So a piece of cheese in the Eat Well guide is supposed to be about that. Oops! This big. That is your portion of cheese. And that's if you're lucky, actually, because it's meant to be about the size of a matchbox, which is actually a little bit smaller than that because this is actually thicker than a matchbox. So it's about the size of a matchbox lengthwise, but depth-wise, it is actually a little bit thicker. So if we're going to be, let's get actually technical about this. Let's get really down to basics. This is actually a typical portion of cheese. Just look at that. It's tiny. It's absolutely tiny. So that's as far as the Eat Well guide. Your protein amounts are meant to be, as I say, you know, a packet of salmon like this would feed 2 people. That's 2 pieces. So actually weight wise, and I don't really go by weight, and I'll talk about that in a second why. So weight wise, these pieces of salmon are, that's 230 grams for 2 pieces of salmon. So yeah, so basically 115 grams of salmon per portion per person. This cheese, I can imagine, would be about 20 grams. Looks about 20 grams, and I know I remember being told by people in the weight loss club, have been in the weight loss clubs, not in them now necessarily, that you were told to eat no more than about 30 grams of cheese. So this would be about right. This little matchbox size piece of cheese, this tiny little piece of cheese, would be your recommended amount. And then of course, as far as fats are concerned, we're looking at a minute amount. As far as butter is concerned, it's an interesting one. So say that you were putting butter on bread. So this little measuring spoons here start out at 1/4 teaspoon, which is 1.25 mils. So that's 1 1/4 mils, right up to tablespoon size, which is 15 mils. So that's your tablespoon size there. That's 15 mils. Okay, so it's really not that big. However, the advice when using butter is to use 1/2 teaspoon. So I've got some butter in the dish here. This is what you're supposed to use. Licking my fingers, but then I can because it's my butter. So this is the amount of butter that you're meant to use. This amount in this tiny little 1/2 teaspoonful. This is 2.5 mils, and look, it is absolutely tiny. And you're meant to butter your bread with that, cook with that, whatever it is, whatever you're using the fat for, that is the amount that you're meant to use, which, as you can see, is an absolutely minute amount. I mean, it's a derisible amount. You can lick that off a knife. But, you know, this is the Eat Well guide, and I think this is the reason why we get really confused, because we're given this, you know, it's kind of like a standard template that we've all been taught about. The Eat Well guide is a very common guide. If you don't know what it is, it's like a picture of a plate. It's called a pie. It's like a pie chart, where you've got the proportion of carbs that you're meant to have, the proportion of greens and fruits, and then the proportion of fats and sugars and protein. So basically, in the Eat Well guide, carbs take up almost half of your daily amount, literally almost half. The carbs are nearly half. And then the other half is the sugary fruit and the veg, but, you know, and potatoes, and, you know, really, really quite, you know, in fact, when you look at the Eat Well guide, it's mainly pictures of very, very sugary fruit, as well as all kinds of veg and potatoes. And so that in the carbs section, you've got bread and you've got pasta. You know, interestingly, the latest Eat Well guide, it's very interesting. They've actually got a little picture of a Belvita biscuit. Talk about conflict of interest, eh? But this is, you know, these are the people that are sponsoring the Eat Well guide. It's the food industry, and I don't know if you know about Belvita biscuits, but they're actually there's forums about Belvita biscuits because they're so high in sugar. They're one of the worst things that you could possibly eat for breakfast in the morning, and there's a lot of advice about people not going anywhere near them. However, they're sponsored, but I think it's Nestle that make them, but don't quote me on that, please. So but they're in the carb advice on the Eat Well guide. You've got Belvita snuggling in there. You've got pasta, you've got bread, you've got rice, you've got you've got chips, you know, you've got yeah, you've got lots and lots of processed carbs in there, mainly processed carbs. Actually, in the carb section, we're looking at mainly processed carbs, and rice as well. But however, rice in itself, as we know, has got a really high GI as well, so isn't necessarily all that good for you. But actually, from the whole guide's point of view, you're looking at a very confusing piece of advice over the proportions of the nutrients that you're meant to take in your day. Almost half being carbs, almost a good third being sugary fruits and quite high carb veg, and then a very small amount, probably about less than a fifth of protein, and then the tiniest little sliver, we're probably looking at about gosh, a tenth, possibly even less than that, for the fats. And actually the sugars is meant to be low as well, but clearly you're already getting the sugars in all the high carb stuff. You're getting the sugars in the sugary fruit, and you're getting the sugars in the high carb processed carbs as well. Excuse me. So, you know, this is the template that we're given already. So it's not surprising that it's very confusing, because these amounts that we're told that are an acceptable daily amount for us are absolutely whack out. You know, if you're going to eat in a ketogenic way, and you're going to really swap over your eating so that the carbs really go out the window, you have to be able to embrace a new way of looking at portion size. The biggest challenge that we have is in upping the protein, and in upping the fats that go with the protein, and in also, I think that one of the biggest challenges as well, and one of the most questions that we have in my Dietless Life around portion size is, how many carbs should I be eating? What does a portion of carbs look like in a day? You know, what is an average portion? So what I'd like to say is, for a start, so talking about macros and talking about macro proportions in your diet, I honestly believe that unless you are at a very particular stage in your weight loss, so towards the end of weight loss when you've only got a few pounds to lose, yes, you may well need to really look at your proportions there and really kind of, you know, fine tune the amounts of fats per proteins that you're having just to get rid of those last few pounds, because they stick so much. You know, they really do stick. However, for most of us, you're looking at what you might say is a natural portion size. Okay, so a natural portion size of fats and a natural portion size of your carbs. Without weighing anything, we've been using a tablespoon as a guideline per portion of carbs. But as Sarah so rightly pointed out, I think it was Sarah, excuse me if it wasn't, it might have been, no, I think it was. If it wasn't Sarah, excuse me, it might have been Penny, that a tablespoon isn't very big. Now, looking again at these measuring spoons, so as I say, one of the smallest is half a teaspoon, and that is what you're supposed to be using as a guide for the amount of butter that you eat, either with butter in your bread or adding it to food or what have you. Just look at that derisory amount. But actually, tablespoons are still not that big. And the photo in my Diet Less Life just a couple of days ago was a photo of what the actual tablespoon looks like in the palm of your hand. So this tablespoon is actually the equivalent of 15 mils in liquid, which it is 15 mils in liquid. But actually, obviously, as a tablespoon size, you know, it easily fits into the palm of your hand. Which way shall I do it? I'll do it that way. Yeah, so it easily fits into the palm of your hand. It is too small as a portion size. Yes, it was you, Sarah. Thank you, darling. I thought it was. So yeah, this is interesting, isn't it? That you know, this is that photo that you took of what a tablespoon looks like. Now, we're going to use a tablespoon again in a minute, this particular tablespoon. But as far as a portion size goes, we are looking at, yes, more than that. We are looking at more than that. Probably double that. Because I think a typical portion size, let's get rid of this cheese, for some typical veg, would be cauliflower is about 3 medium-sized florets. Here we go. So that's about three medium-sized florets there. And these are all uncooked, so obviously they will cook down slightly, but there's no weights needed here. You really don't need to weigh those. You know what that looks like. You know, you don't need to actually weigh it. And I think, you know, as soon as you go into the macro counting and having to weigh everything, you are back to training yourself to eat less food, or to be wary of food, or to measure it, or to somehow have to keep it in line and keep it in check, you know, and it just takes away the pleasure of how we're trying to do things in my Diet Less Life and in ketogenic eating in general. You know, the joy for ketogenic eating for most people is the fact that you have got that freedom from all of that. You've got the relief from all of that. There's no more counting. There's no more calorie counting or sins counting or whatever it is, you know, you're not counting. So you're using your own natural ability to know what a portion size looks like. I don't blame a lot of people for not trusting that, because we've been told that we don't know best, haven't we? We've been told by whatever weight loss company it is, or whatever, you know, whatever program we've been on, or whatever system we've been following, that they will work out all your amounts for you, because you can't be trusted to know what a portion size is for you. For an average woman, me, average, yep, I would say, this is an average portion of cauliflower. You know, if you're over 6 foot tall and you train every day of the week, you need double that, don't you? You know, I would say that you probably need double that if you go training, or if you do a lot of exercise, or you're very tall, or you have, you know, you're burning up a lot of energy and you need a big amount of food, then clearly you would have double. But this is what I would call an average portion size of cauliflower. And actually, if you look at that, using the tablespoons, I think this would probably be about 2 tablespoons really. So you've got 1 tablespoon, bung it on the plate, and yeah, well, actually probably more like 3 tablespoons actually. Then we've got 2 of these, but they don't fit on the tablespoon. So this is what it looks like on an average size plate. In fact, I'll just pull that down so you can see what that looks like on an average size plate, you see? So that's one portion of veg on the side of your plate there. And that would be what, you know, by eye, you would say that that's an average portion. So then the same with broccoli. This is long stem broccoli, so it's a little bit lighter than the stuff that you get in the big bulb. This is the tender stem stuff. So I would say normally, again, you're looking at about 3 florets. I've put 4 in because they are quite small. So here they are again. Again, they're not big florets, as I say, because it's the tender stem broccoli. So you put that on the plate and you've got 2 portions there. Now, bearing in mind that this has got to cook down yet as well. So let's just turn that down a little bit more. Yeah, you can see. So by the time that's cooked down, that's quite a large portion, actually. That is quite a large portion, and that is very doable. And that, for me, would be 3 of your 5 a day. Although there's only 2 veg there, that would be a good 3 portions. So actually what you'd be looking at in terms of carbs is probably about 10 grams of carbs for those. Maybe a little bit less, but I would say between about 9 and 10 grams of carbs for these 2 portions, because they're good sized portions, you know, and you could have that on your dinner quite easily. But that's three of your portions. That's 3 out of your portions of your carbs for the day. So if you're looking at mushrooms, then again, I've got some that are a bit beleaguered, they're the last in the fridge, but they so you'd be looking at a couple of those once they're chopped. Here you go, a couple of those. They're quite large mushrooms as well, so a couple of those would be, you know, a nice portion size, and you know, they cook down as the veg is going to do. They're going to cook down slightly anyway. Of course, these are your protein as well as your carbs. So that's what they would look like on a plate. On the plate, you see. So if you cooked, in fact, this is a great vegan dinner because you've got some lovely mixed proteins here. You'd have you know, if you had a bit of a nut sauce on these as well, you'd be well away. So there you go, Sarah M. Something to look at there. Look, vegan dinner, delightful. So yeah, you've got a couple of sort of medium. I'd say that's large-ish mushrooms. So that's what average portions look like, is what you would dish up as an average portion on somebody's plate or on your own plate. If you were taking veg out of a bowl, you know, on the middle of a dinner table, you'd take a couple of tablespoons full, you know, which is what this lot would look like. Each of these portions would look like as they were cooked down. And as I say, you're probably looking at about 3 portions of carbs out of your 5 a day. So, and then the mushrooms being another portion of carbs out your 5 a day. If you had strawberries, then I've actually finished the strawberries. I've just eaten them. Should have saved them. Me and my grandson have just eaten them all. But when I was looking at them, 3 medium-sized strawberries is a portion because they're sweet. They've got a lot of sugar in them. They're yummy, yummy, yummy. And, you know, us sugar girls will even go for strawberries because of the sugar. So really, you would be looking at one of these tablespoons, which is far more an appropriate size spoon. One of those, maybe 1.5. So you'd be looking at 3, you know, good sized strawberries that chopped up. You'd probably get one of those into 1.5 of these spoons. So that's your carb amounts. And I think your carb amounts, we do get our knickers in a twist with these carb amounts. And I think it's not surprising, like I say, we have, you know, been told an awful lot of confusing advice over what is, you know, what's the typical amount to eat in a day. And we've been told to be very wary of the fats, wary of the protein, and then to fill our boots with the sugary carbs and the processed carbs as well, and the you know, the root veg and so on. So, and then we come to keto, and then we're told about, you know, a portion of this and a portion of that is so many grams, and my God, what does a portion look like? So I hope that helps to kind of give you an idea of what the regular veg looks like, and a regular portion size truly is what you would dish up for yourself. And this is the power of being able to use your own eye, your own appetite, and to get back to what is a natural portion size, okay? Because that's the natural portion size for carbs. there is a natural portion size for fats and a natural portion size for proteins as well that has been even more skewed, and especially the fats obviously has been even more kind of taken out of balance and out of context by the Eat Well guide and by the, you know, regular kind of dietary advice that we're given, especially the fats. A typical amount of butter to fry with would easily be a tablespoonful, and I mean a large tablespoonful. Here we go. I'm going to use my fingers because it's my butter, but basically you're looking at quite large. This is 1 tablespoon, 15 mils. That is a very typical amount of butter to cook with. Okay. That's really, yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that it's reassuring, Sarah, and a reassuringly normal looking portion of veg. Exactly. We do get, the trouble is as well, I think, I haven't actually been to any of the slimming clubs, but I can imagine that their advice for your portion sizes for the carbs and for portion sizes in general of your meals is tiny, so that you get a kind of an approach to food that is all about limiting the amount that you can actually put on your plate in the first time. And it can be hard to know then, if you haven't done it for a long time, what a normal size portion of veg actually looks like. It can get very skewed. I get that, I really do. So yeah, here we are. This is the fats. This is what we're looking at as far as fats is concerned. When you're cooking, when you're frying these mushrooms, you're using this much fat. I'll show you what it looks like in a bowl. Let me just get this fat out so you can see what it actually looks like. In fact, I'm just going to get a spoon. And I'll put this next to the mushroom so you can see the size of it compared to the 2 mushrooms. There you go. So that's how much fat we're looking at. I mean, for 2 mushrooms, that's quite a lot of fat really, isn't it? You know, that's quite a nice portion of butter. If I was going to cook an omelette in the morning, in fact, if I was going to cook scrambled eggs, actually, I'm just going to use that as a unlimited veg, right, Sarah? Yeah, unlimited veg. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it depends what you mean, what veg they are, you know, what does it mean by unlimited? You know, if it is absolutely unlimited, then of course you're going to eat far more carbs and your body's going to keep running on the carbs rather than on the fats. It's going to keep running on the sugars. But being vegan as well, I wonder is that why the advice was to eat unlimited veg, or was that for everybody? I'd be interested to know the answer to that. But so I was going to say, if I was going to cook scrambled eggs, then I would use, to cook 2 scrambled eggs, I would use this much butter. So this tablespoon of butter would go into a pan with the scrambled eggs. But also, this is for breakfast. But also, I wouldn't just rely on one source of fat. So this is where the portion size becomes more interesting, because the portion sizes of fats need to be substantially higher, and maybe higher than if you've not been able to think about fat as a source of fuel for a long time, can be way higher than you are, you know, currently visualizing as you know, able to eat. So if I was going to have scrambled eggs in the morning, I would cook them in that much butter, and I would put at least this much cheese in. In fact, I'm going to chop off a little bit more, because in all honesty, I've got to be honest about the amount of cheese that I would have. Okay, I would be having this much cheese. Okay, this is vintage cheddar. So all of that would get chopped into little chunks and dropped into the egg mix. So, you know, whisking up the egg mix in the pan. Whoops, where are we? Where are we? Where have we gone? Just one second. We've gone the wrong way around. There we go. Sorry about that. You were just looking at my kitchen tiles, weren't they lovely? I haven't been clean for a while probably. Okay, so the scrambled eggs in the morning, I'd have two eggs, mix them up. I'd often put seeds in them as well. This much cheese, this much vintage cheddar chopped into little chunks and then cooked in this big 15 ml tablespoon of butter. So that's the kind of fats that you're looking at for breakfast, because at breakfast, particularly if you're on the program, you already know there's plenty of advice about breakfast and why it's so important, but mainly you need your fats in the morning. So if you're eating scrambled eggs, cheesy buttery scrambled eggs, then you've got the cheese, you've got the butter, and you've also got fat from the eggs as well. So you've got 3 sources of fat in the scrambled eggs just by cooking the scrambled eggs, and it's a large amount of fat. So what happens then when you look at macros and you're told about proportions of fats to protein, and there's a certain amount of, well, it's not actually a proportion of fats to protein, is it? It's actually the amount of protein in grams, the amount of fats in grams, and the amount of carbs in grams, which can be very, very confusing. However, if you look at your dinner this way, that you've got some protein and then you add a couple of sources of fat to it, then you've got the proportions right. So another example would be then, so this keto salmon, this salmon as protein for my dinner would be at least 1.5 pieces of salmon, if not 2, to be honest with you. If I'd been out cycling and I'd been on a big bike ride, it would definitely be 2. So 2 pieces, skin on. So frying the skin so it's gorgeous and crispy, or the fat's underneath the skin as well. And then I would put cream cheese on it. So I'd put a, you know, each piece of the salmon would have a really nice layer of cream cheese on it, quite a bit of cream cheese, so the cream cheese would melt on it. And then I'd mash cauliflower. So I'd cook the cauliflower and then in a microwave steamer, mash it with a potato masher, so it's all nice and broken up. And then I would mix it with this 15 ml of butter. So that would be dinner. Okay, or if I was having 2 sorts of veg, then I would probably, myself, I would have less. So if I was going to have 2 sorts of veg, I would have a little bit less as far as the, probably as far as the broccoli is concerned. So if I was having 2 portions, then I would have this much veg with the salmon. So the salmon would dominate the plate, let's face it. These 2 pieces of salmon would dominate the plate, see? Like that, with cream cheese on the top. And these veg between them would have this much butter as well. So what you're doing is you're taking as much naturally occurring fats as you possibly can, and then you're adding more. So you're having what you might say is more than a normal size portion of protein. I know that normally, as I say, as far as the Eat Well guide is concerned, you'd be told to eat 1 of these pieces of salmon and you would be told to take the skin off. Most definitely, especially in the weight loss clubs, there'd be no way you'd be having the skin. But the skin, when it's fried and it's crispy, it is the bit where I go, aren't you eating that? Do you mind if I have that? You sure you don't want that? It's amazing. It's delightful. So what you're looking at, as far as portion sizes go, when it comes to macro counting, is to have more protein than normal. So when you're looking at breakfast with the cheesy buttery scrambles, not only have you got the protein from the eggs, but you've got them from the cheese as well. Cheese is quite high in protein, so you've got 2 sources of protein there, and then you've got 3 sources of fat. Okay, and then so your dinner, you would have at least 1.5 pieces of salmon, which is about 150 grams, maybe more of protein there. Well, I don't know how much protein there would actually be in there, but 150 grams of salmon at least, if not 200. I don't think 200 is out of the realm of possibility, really, with the cream cheese on the top, which is another source of fat. So that's 2 sources of fat, because obviously you've got the fat from the salmon as well, and then the butter on the veg. So you've got 3 sources of fat that way. And this enables you to be able to do it naturally. So it doesn't take a lot of thinking about. You can do it by eye. Nothing needs to be weighed. Nothing needs to be weighed. You need to eat as much protein as feels just nice for you, which is more than you've been eating in the past if you've been on a weight loss diet in the slimming clubs or on any of these programs at all. You are looking at a really, really limited amount of protein. And the thing is, actually, for most of us, for women, we don't get enough protein. Nothing like enough protein, and we definitely don't get enough fats. And your hormones are made of fats. Your hormones are lipids. They're fat soluble. So gosh, your hormones you need fats in your body so that you can move those hormones around your bloodstream. You need the fats, and especially the fats from butter, from cheese, from salmon, because there's such high amounts of vitamin E in all of these, which vitamin E is just your hormones are absolutely keening for vitamin E, you know. Vitamin E is what your hormones dissolve in it so easily. So all of this food is meant to be joyful in its amounts, in its portion sizes. You're meant to have a joyful amount, and actually to see your plate 180 degrees differently, rather than little bit of tiny bit of protein, minute a bit of fat, large amount of veg. You've got a contained amount of veg. As I say, probably two portions for veg for dinner, especially if you're going on a weight loss phase, unless you're first starting. Okay, when you're first starting, you're starting out on 50 grams. So Sarah, I know that you said that you were a bit confused about the amount of grams to eat. At first, between about 40 and 60 grams is fine, because you're dropping down from hundreds. Okay, and then you are going to refine it, and you are going to step down a step further. But you just, you can't get from over there to over there straight away. You need to do it in stages. So going down to between about 40 and 60 grams to start off with is completely acceptable, and you don't need to worry if you go to 65. You won't even notice if you go to 65, but being around that sort of area, you'll be in ketosis, which is the main thing at the very beginning of your weight loss journey. But then once you're used to that, once your body's fat adapted, once you're running on fat like a dream, then you start to lower the carbs even further, keeping the fats and the proteins as they are, because the fats and the proteins, remember, are the bit that fills you. The carbs give you the colours, basically, and the veg gives you the colours, and of course you've got nutrients in the veg as well. So one other word that I would say about portion sizes is, obviously, if you are vegan or vegetarian, then you may well need to use a slightly higher amount of carbs, of the complex veg as carbs, because you won't be getting it in any other way. You actually, believe it or not, we won't go into protein, actually, because it'll only make it worse. That's great, Sarah, that makes sense to you, love. Yeah, that's absolutely great. So you would probably find, you're very welcome, Sarah Co, as well, darling. So you'll probably find that over time the portion size will drop substantially. But what I was going to say about your complex carbs is, because you are limiting the amount of carbs, you can still get your 5 a day. As I say, these two portions of broccoli and cauliflower with those mushrooms is 3 of your 5 a day. You have a tablespoon or so of strawberries and maybe half an avocado, and you've got your 5 a day. It's so easy. It really doesn't take much, and you don't need a massive amount of colours. I mean, this is another thing that, about your 5 a day, was that this is food industry advertising from years ago, where they said you need all the colours of the world and da-da-da. No, you don't. Up until the 1970s, 5 a day meant 4 portions of broccoli and a tomato. That was your 5 a day. We didn't have this huge variety of veg and colours, and there's a big pressure on us to kind of try and bring in all this veg and all this fruit, because it's been, it's shown to be, or it's been perceived as being good for us, but it isn't. It's, so make every one of your carbs, your complex veg, that is, when I say carbs, I mean your complex veg, make them count and make them a superfood. Your broccoli, asparagus, mushrooms, cauliflower, I could go on, your leeks, your red onions, your green cabbage, your cruciferous veg, like your Brussels sprouts, all of these foods, avocado, are superfoods. Blueberries, blueberries, definitely 1 tablespoon. In fact, I'll show you what blueberries look like. I'm just going to get rid of this butter. Excuse me. 1 tablespoon of blueberries. Be careful with the blueberries because they are little bullets of sugar, but they are a superfood, so by all means enjoy them in small amounts. If you're only starting out on your weight loss journey, then yeah, keep it as simple as you possibly can, and keep it as kind of, you know, keep it quite yeah, quite simple at first and quite controlled in the amount of veg that you use. I know you were saying, Sarah, that there are a couple of recipes that you've seen, keto recipes using carrots. I'd really like you to put the link in for those so I can have a look, so I can just have a look and see what that's all about. Because yeah, carrots, you do have to be a little bit careful with them at first. Over time, we can start to increase and we can bring things in that feel more comfortable to us, especially when we get into the weight maintenance phase. But in the early days of weight loss, you want to keep the complex veg as simple as possible, which is why I say as well, try and steer clear of processed food as much as you possibly can, because you don't know what the ingredients are. You don't know what the proportions are. They'll tell you on the back box, but it won't make any flipping sense. You know, it's not meant to make any sense. They don't want you to actually know what's going on in there. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you for putting them on the page, darling. So yeah, so as far as that's concerned, you know, make every one of your veg a superfood. Your complex carbs, make them count. I mean, I actually do now, because I'm in weight maintenance phase, I will spend my carbs on a big fat piece of beetroot every day because I love it, and it is a massive superfood, and it's probably about 7-8 grams of carbs. So for me, that'll be 2 portions, you know, which is fine. It's fine for me because it's an absolute superfood. Beetroot is, you know, saviour of the world in my simple mind, because it is, you know, it's an absolute brilliant antioxidant. So things like, as I say, things like your asparagus and things like your cruciferous veg, you know, eat that and mix it with butter. So stir frying Brussels sprouts in butter, I do it many mornings. In fact, a lot of the time I'll have the cheesy buttery scrambled eggs where you've got 3 portions of fat, and then I'll stir fry Brussels sprouts in butter as well. 4 portions of fats, and that will see me through until 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm just wondering if that's my grandson making that noise, but I don't think it is. He's watching Shaun the sheep. Yeah, he's okay. So yeah, so you are looking at a very natural way of doing that, a very natural way of counting those carbs so that they make sense in relation to the rest of your meal. But more protein than you're used to in the slimming clubs, and lots more fats than you're used to in the slimming clubs, and definitely more fats than they're advertised in the so-called Eat Well guide, the typical guide that we're all given. There is a lot of help out there. There are sites out there. The Diet Doctor, I know, has a really good kind of meal planning as well. If you're on the BWL program, then obviously, you know, we've got a lot of information there. I'm going to put some more in, because if there's still some confusion for you guys that are on the program, then I'll do what I can, obviously, to make it as clear as possible for you, because I know when you're starting out, you're actually coming, it's not like you just, you know, got off the boat, is it? You know, you're already, you know, you've been given so much advice in the past, and a lot of it can be really conflicting advice depending on which slimming clubs you go to, or which programs you join, or so on, or which help that you look for that act as if they, or not necessarily, that makes it sound quite cynical, but, you know, profess to know exactly what's good for your body. It can be really difficult to then be able to switch that off and find a whole new way of looking at things. So I understand that it's complicated. So hopefully this has cleared it up tonight. I'm going to put this live into the group, and I'll pin it to the top of the page so that you can refer back to it. You can, you know, have a good look through it so it all makes sense for you. And I think I might actually put this video actually into the program on module 1 as well. I've just thought about that. How good is that? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add this video into module 1, and it'll be typical portion sizes, so that you've got a good idea then that you can just refer back to whenever you need. But I'll actually keep it on the top of the page for my Diet LessLife for a week or so as well, so you've got plenty of chance to refer back to it if you're not in the BWL program. Thanks for watching, and I hope I've answered your questions. It would appear so. Yeah, Okay, and have fun. You can always ask any questions underneath me in the comments anyway. So thanks for joining me and have a lovely evening.